The first time my husband beat me until I bled, I was 60. Yes, 60. Not some young woman trapped in early marriage. No. I was older, tired, with bones that ached in winter and a heart that had been worn down by decades of disappointment. And he still hit me like I was a threat. Hi, before I begin, I want to ask you, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if this story touches your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because stories like mine, they happen every day, and women like me, we're often too ashamed to speak. But not today. Today, I'm going to tell you everything. Chapter 1. He beat me until I couldn't scream. My name is Zareena Malik. I'm 64 years old. And until recently, I believed I was just a shadow in my own house. That night, years ago, he slammed my head into the edge of the stove because I forgot to warm his tea. That's all. And as the blood ran down my cheek, I remember his words, crueler than any bruise he left on my body. You're just a useless old woman. If I could sell you for scrap, I would. He laughed. My son, Riaz, laughed with him. They both laughed while I lay curled up on the kitchen floor. No one came for me. No neighbor knocked. My daughter-in-law whispered behind doors, calling me a burden. I cooked. I cleaned. I washed the very clothes stained with my own blood. But my silence fed their power. And maybe you're watching this now because you felt this too. The weight of aging, the invisibility, the fear that nobody will hear you scream. I see you. I am you. But don't go anywhere. Because something happened. Something that turned my story from despair to power. And by the end of these 20 chapters, the same men who beat me will be on their knees, begging for help. So stay with me, friends. This is just the beginning. Chapter 2. My son spat on me for asking for milk. If you've ever felt like a stranger in your own family, then you'll understand this. But imagine giving birth to someone, feeding them, raising them, praying for them, only for that same child to treat you worse than a stray dog on the street. That's what my son, Riaz, did to me. It was a cold evening. My knees ached from hours of standing barefoot on the cracked kitchen tiles. I was making tea for everyone, and I quietly asked Riaz if we had any milk left. I was thinking maybe, just maybe, I could warm a little for myself. My stomach hadn't held anything but tap water that whole day. He turned around, looked at me like I was filth under his shoe, and said, "Why don't you die already? You're just draining what little we have. Can't even earn, and still want milk like a queen." And then he spat. Right there. On my hand. The same hand that once cradled him when he was feverish. The same hand that fed him with trembling fingers when I could barely stand. I didn't cry. Not then. I swallowed it like I'd swallowed every insult, every slap. Every night I went to bed without food so they could eat. But something broke inside me that day. Something silent. Something dangerous. I started to write down everything. Every word. Every bruise. Every insult. Not to complain, but to remember. You see, sometimes, the only way to survive is to prepare. Quietly. Carefully. Like a storm gathering in secret. And though I didn't know it then, those notes? They would one day become my weapon. If you're watching this and you're feeling that lump in your throat right now, don't hold it in. Leave a comment. Tell me if you've ever been betrayed by your own child. And please like this video. Share it. Because there are millions of women like us suffering in silence. But silence doesn't mean weakness. And I'm just getting started. Chapter 3. I was locked in the storage room like an animal. Have you ever smelled your own sweat rotting in your clothes while rats scratch near your feet and the only light comes from a crack in the door? That's where they put me. The storage room. A narrow, stinking cell full of rusted tools, torn sacks, and spider webs. No windows. No fan. No water. No bed. They told the neighbors I was resting. That I was ill and needed space. But the truth? I had dared to speak up. I asked Riaz to stop his wife from calling me names in front of my grandchildren. I had said, "Have some shame. I'm your mother." He looked at me like I had insulted him, and by the end of that day, I was thrown into the storage room like a rag no one wanted to see again. I scratched at the wooden door until my nails bled. I screamed until my voice cracked. No one came. Not even the granddaughter who used to braid my hair. I think the worst pain wasn't the hunger or the darkness. It was the betrayal. And yet, as I sat in that damp room, knees pulled to my chest, heart broken into dust, I promised myself something. They would never get the satisfaction of watching me break. If you're still here, still listening, maybe it's because you've felt this too, that isolation, that humiliation, that prison of silence. But hear me now, this is not the end of my story. In fact, something strange happened while I was locked up. Something I never expected. Something that would light the match that burned everything they built from my pain. Before we move on, please, if this story echoes even a piece of your soul, hit the like button, share it, and leave a comment. Tell me your story. Tell us. You are not invisible. You are not alone. I was locked in a room like an animal, but I will not die in a cage. Chapter 4. I overheard a secret that changed everything. If they hadn't locked me in that filthy storage room, maybe I would have never heard it. Funny, isn't it? Sometimes cruelty opens doors that kindness never would. I was lying on a sack of old rice bags, trying to stretch my aching legs when I heard footsteps. Riaz and his wife, Nadia. They stood just outside the door, whispering. But the walls were thin. Thin enough for me to hear my own betrayal unfold like a sick play. She still has that land in her name, right? Nadia hissed. The one her father gave her before she married you? Riaz grunted. Yeah, that cursed land in Faisalabad. It's worth at least $100,000 now. I stopped breathing. My father's land. The only thing I had left from my old life. The only thing they hadn't touched because they didn't know how. She'll never give it up, Riaz muttered. Nadia laughed. Then we'll make her. Just keep starving her, make her think she's dying. Sign it over and be done with her. My vision blurred with rage. They weren't just abusing me out of hate. They were strategic. They were greedy. And I was nothing more than a stepping stone to their luxury. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I planned. Because now I knew. They didn't want me gone. They wanted what was mine. To every woman listening, especially you, the one in silence, in fear, in pain, please listen closely. Your story is not over. Even if they beat you, even if they trap you, even if they whisper outside your prison door. Sometimes they tell on themselves. And all you need is to listen. Please comment if you've ever felt trapped like this. Share this video. Let someone else know they aren't crazy. And don't forget to subscribe because I'm going to show you exactly how I turned their plot into their downfall. Chapter 5. I signed nothing, but they faked everything. You think you've seen betrayal? Try being locked in a room, half-starved, while your own blood forges your signature to steal your life away. 2 days after I overheard Riaz and Nadia whispering about the land, they opened the storage room door. He brought me a bowl of soup, hot, fragrant, with real chicken in it. The same son who once spat on me. He crouched beside me like a concerned little boy. Amy, he said sweetly, I'm sorry for everything. I don't want to fight anymore. Just sign this paper so I can open a joint account in your name. For your safety. I looked at him. Really looked. And behind that fake smile, I saw greed twitching in his jaw. So I said what a broken mother says. I'm too tired to sign anything now. Bring it tomorrow. He nodded. Left. But that night, I heard Nadia on the phone, laughing. She didn't sign it, but we don't need her to. My cousin's in property registration, he'll forge it. The land's as good as ours. And just like that, I realized my signature was just ink to them. They didn't need my permission to steal what was mine. Because they never saw me as a person. Just a gate they needed to break open. The next morning, they celebrated. Champagne, laughter, music. All while I sat in that dark room, shaking not from fear anymore, but from fury. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed, not for peace, but for strength. And while they toasted their theft, I made a silent vow. They might forge my name, but they'll never own my story. Ladies, if you've ever had your trust stolen, your identity twisted, your own family betray you like this, please comment. Tell us your truth. And if this story feels too real, it's because it is. Click like, share it, because millions of us exist in shadows, and it's time to step into the light. Chapter 6. They laughed while I bled on the bathroom floor. I had collapsed. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet thud in the night. My body couldn't take the hunger, the stress, the damp rot of that storage room anymore. I had been allowed to use the bathroom outside, but barely. I tried to wash my face, and the next thing I knew, I was on the floor, my forehead split open on the rusted pipe under the sink. Blood. Warm, thick. Running past my cheek like a silent scream. I was still conscious, barely. But I didn't have the strength to move. So I just lay there, frozen, listening. I heard them walk past. Riaz. Nadia. My grandson. She's still in there? Nadia scoffed. Riaz replied, let her rot. Maybe she'll finally die, and we can sell that land without drama. And then they laughed. My own flesh and blood. I wanted to die, not because I couldn't take the pain, but because the people I loved most were monsters in human skin. Do you know what it's like to lie in your own blood and realize your existence means nothing to the people you raised? I hope you never do. But if you do know that feeling, if you've been ignored, left to suffer, treated like waste, then please comment. Tell me you're out there. Tell me I'm not alone. Because we need each other. Our pain deserves to be heard. I managed to crawl back to the storage room. I tied a piece of cloth around my head. No one checked on me. No one asked. Not even the women in the house. But in that moment, bleeding, shaking, I realized something. If they weren't going to save me, then I had only one option left. I had to save myself. Please like this video if you're still here. Share it if it touched something inside you. And subscribe because you need to see what happens next. This isn't just a story about suffering. It's a story about revenge. And soon, they'll wish I had died on that bathroom floor. Chapter 7. I escaped the house with a bloodied scarf and a plan. I didn't have shoes. I didn't have a coat. But I had a plan, and sometimes, when life takes everything from you, that plan becomes the fire that keeps you alive. It was just past 4 a.m. The house was silent. I'd been watching their patterns for weeks, counting the hours when Nadia went to bed and Riaz drowned in whiskey. That night, I wrapped my blood-stained scarf tight around my head, covered the bruises with a shawl, and slipped out through the back door they never fixed. My hands trembled as I walked down the alley. My legs barely held me. But I kept walking. Every step away from that house was a step toward becoming someone again. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew who I was running from. And that was enough. A neighbor, a woman I'd once given lentils to when she was hungry, saw me collapse near her gate. She gasped, rushed to me, and said words I hadn't heard in years. "Amma, what happened to you?" I cried, not from pain, but because someone finally cared. She took me in, cleaned my wounds, fed me warm soup, and for the first time in what felt like centuries, I slept on a mattress, not cement. I stayed silent for a day, then 2. On the 3rd day, I whispered my truth. She held my hand the whole time, and when I told her about the land, the forged papers, the beatings, she didn't just believe me. She said, "Let's expose them." And that's when I knew. God had sent me not a miracle, but a weapon. Her name was Meherunissa, and she had connections I never dreamed of. To every woman listening, especially if you're over 60, tired, and thinking no one will ever come hear this, sometimes help arrives quietly. Sometimes it looks like an old neighbor with chai-stained hands. But when it comes, grab it. Because you deserve it. Please like this video if you've ever felt abandoned but kept going. Comment and tell me, have you ever had a stranger become your savior? And don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next? It's the beginning of their downfall. Chapter 8. The lawyer didn't want to believe me until he saw the bruises. Mehrunisa didn't waste time. She took photos of my injuries. The cut on my forehead, the fading purple around my arms, the raw skin on my wrists. She documented every wound like evidence from a crime scene because that's exactly what it was. She brought in a lawyer the next morning. A middle-aged man named Mr. Hafiz. Sharp suit, serious eyes. But when he saw me, a frail, shivering old woman with shaking hands and no proof of identity, he sighed. These cases rarely go anywhere, he said. Especially without documents. Especially if they've already faked your signature. I wanted to scream, to slap the table, to tell him I wasn't just some case. I was a mother robbed of her dignity, a woman burned alive while breathing. But I said nothing. Instead, I pulled up my sleeve and showed him the bruises. Then I moved the scarf from my forehead and let him see the dried scab above my brow. And finally, I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Would you let your mother live like this?" He sat in silence for a long moment. Then something shifted in his face. His jaw clenched. His voice softened. "Tell me everything." I told him. From the tea burns to the forged documents. From the beatings to the threats. From the land they coveted to the nights they laughed while I bled. He listened. He took notes. And when I finished, he looked at Mehrunisa and said, "She's going to need protection. And I'm going to need every legal loophole we can find." For the first time in years, I felt something dangerous and unfamiliar rise in my chest. Hope. To those of you watching, sometimes people won't believe you at first. They'll look at your wrinkles and your silence and assume you're confused, emotional, or making it up. But the truth? It shows. In your eyes. In your scars. And one day, someone will see it. Please like this video. Comment if you've ever had to prove your pain to someone who doubted you. And subscribe because next, I'm going to tell you how we cracked their lies wide open. Chapter 9. The forged signature was their first mistake. 2 weeks. That's how long it took Mr. Hafiz to uncover what Riaz and Nadia thought they buried forever. He started with the land registry. Requested certified copies of the transfer documents they claimed I had signed. And guess what? They forged it badly. The handwriting didn't match mine. The ink was smudged in places. And worst of all, they used a signature I hadn't written since I was 45, back when I still believed I had a real family. Mr. Hafiz smiled when he handed me the copy. "They were arrogant," he said. "They thought you'd never have the strength to fight back." But that wasn't all. The land they transferred? It was already in the middle of a sale. They had listed it with a shady developer, hoping to cash out before I even noticed. That was their second mistake. Because with Mehrunisa's help, we got a stay order. A legal freeze. The deal was blocked. The land couldn't be touched. And just like that, everything they planned to build on my suffering came crumbling down. You should have seen their faces when the notice arrived at their doorstep. Mehrunisa's nephew delivered it himself, just so he could tell me exactly how Riaz stammered and Nadia turned pale. "They think you're dead," he said with a smirk. They weren't expecting a ghost to send a lawyer. Let them panic. Let them feel what I felt. Uncertainty, fear, helplessness. To every woman who's been cheated, silenced, erased, paper trails matter. Keep your documents. Copy your ID. Hide your evidence. Because when your voice isn't loud enough, proof speaks for you. If this chapter gave you even a flicker of hope, like it, share this video with someone who's ever been betrayed by their own blood. And please subscribe because next, you'll see how the same people who laughed while I starved came crawling to me. Chapter 10. My son came to beg, but I wasn't the same mother anymore. They didn't know I was alive. Not until their world started unraveling. The blocked sale. The frozen assets. The public embarrassment when the developer pulled out and started whispering about fraud and legal issues. Then one morning, I heard a knock at Mehrunisa's gate. soft, hesitant, like guilt itself had learned how to knock. It was Riaz, my son, the one who had spat on me, the one who had kicked my ribs when I dropped a teacup. He didn't recognize the house, didn't know I was standing just behind the curtain, watching through the window as he looked around like a desperate child. Maharunisa opened the door. He fidgeted, forced a smile. "Auntie, is there an old woman staying here? I think she might be my mother." She didn't flinch. "Which mother? The one you beat until she bled? Or the one whose land you tried to steal?" He stuttered. "Please. I just want to talk to her." She turned to look at me. I stepped forward. I don't know what I expected to feel, rage, sadness, maybe even some twisted maternal softness. But I felt nothing, because the woman who once longed for his approval, his affection, his voice, she was gone. I opened the door fully. He gasped. "Amy," he whispered. "Thank God, you're alive. We've been looking for you." We made mistakes. I raised my hand. "I'm not your Amy," I said. "Your Amy died the day you laughed while I bled on the bathroom floor." He dropped to his knees. "Right there on the street. Please." The land deal collapsed. We lost money. We're in debt. Nadia's gone back to her parents. The kids are hungry. Just come home, or help me get a loan. Please. I looked him in the eyes. And for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. "No," I said. "You killed the mother you want help from. Go ask her ghost." To every woman watching this, how many times have your abusers come crawling back when they suffer? How many times were you expected to forget the scars they left? Comment below if you've lived through that moment. Like this video if you've ever had to find your strength alone. And please, subscribe, because we're only halfway through. And trust me, karma hasn't finished with them yet. Chapter 11. I told him I'd rather die than help him again. The neighborhood was watching. Riaz, kneeling in the dirt. Me, standing at the gate like a ghost he thought he buried. His tears didn't move me. His apologies didn't soothe me. Because I knew those weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of consequence. "Emmy, please," he begged again, grabbing the edge of my shawl. "Just talk to the bank. Just sign as guarantor. They won't give me a loan without your name." I pulled my shawl back. "I gave you my blood, my health, my bones. You spat on them. Now you want my name." I stepped forward, my voice louder than it had been in years. "I would rather die 100 times than ever help you again." He flinched like I'd slapped him. But I didn't stop. "Do you remember when I asked for milk and you spat on me? When I collapsed in the bathroom and you laughed? When you called me a burden and locked me in that dark room like trash?" His eyes welled up again. "I wasn't thinking, no, you were. You thought I'd never stand. That I'd die in silence. But look at me now." He stood slowly, anger creeping back into his voice. "You think you're something now, huh? Just because some lawyer helped you?" I leaned in, whispered coldly, "No, not because of the lawyer. Because you forgot what kind of woman raised you." He left. Humiliated, broken, but the most shocking part? That wasn't the last time he came back. To every woman watching this, you do not owe forgiveness to those who destroyed you. You do not have to heal their wounds while yours are still bleeding. Comment if you've ever had to reject someone who once crushed you. Like this video if this chapter gave you strength. And subscribe, because in the next chapter, they come back. But this time, with a price they didn't expect to pay. Chapter 12. The bank froze his account, and I was the reason. It's strange how power shifts when the truth gets involved. A week after Riaz came begging, I got a call from Mr. Hafiz. He was grinning through the phone. "Zareena G," he said, "you'll want to sit down for this." The bank had reviewed my affidavit. The forged documents. The photographs of my injuries. The legal stay on the property. And you know what they did? They froze his account. Every penny locked. Every transaction rejected. Every credit line suspended. Riaz, who used to wave his wallet in my face and mock my torn slippers, now couldn't buy a bus ticket without calling the bank manager. And the best part? They informed him it was because of a fraud investigation, triggered by his mother. Me. I didn't laugh. Not because it wasn't satisfying, but because it still hurt. Not the bank freeze, but the idea that I had to go this far. That this was my son. That I had to destroy him just to breathe. But I did it anyway. Because sometimes, survival requires war. That night, I sipped chai with Meherunissa under the flickering light of her porch. She handed me a piece of mithai. To victory, she said softly. I didn't celebrate. I mourned. But I also let myself feel a flicker of pride. To every woman watching this, especially you, sitting in the silence of a room where no one hears you, you are not powerless. You are not stupid. You are not weak. You are a survivor waiting for your moment. And when that moment comes, let them feel the chill they gave you. Please comment below if you've ever had to take legal action against someone you once loved. Like this video if you've ever tasted the bittersweet flavor of justice. And subscribe because what happens next? Even I didn't see it coming. Chapter 13. My granddaughter ran away to find me. I was sitting on the porch when I heard it. A knock, so soft, so nervous, it reminded me of my own hands trembling years ago when I'd knock on my father's door in shame. I opened it slowly, and there she was. My granddaughter. Little Layla. 16 years old. Hair uncombed. Eyes red. Clothes wrinkled from travel. She looked up at me, tears clinging to her lashes. Dottie, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know what they did to you. My heart stopped. This was the same child who had once ignored me in the hallway, too afraid to speak when her mother cursed me. The same girl who looked away when I bled. I stared at her in silence. She reached for my hand. They lied, she whispered. They told me you left. That you ran away. But I found the court letter. I saw your name on the land file. I read your diary, the one you hid in the kitchen drawer. Dottie, I read everything. I collapsed into the chair. That old diary. The one I started the night Riaz first raised his hand. I had thought they burned it, but she found it. She read it. I didn't cry. Not yet. I want to stay with you, she said. They treat me the same now. Like a servant. Like furniture. I don't want to be like them. And that was the moment I realized, not everyone in a toxic family stays toxic. Some children see. Some children break free. And some come back home. I hugged her for a long, long time. Because the bruises on my body had faded. But the wound of being forgotten by the ones you loved never truly heals. To every grandmother, every mother, every woman who thinks she's lost the next generation, please listen. Sometimes, the seeds you plant grow later. Sometimes, they find you after the fire. Comment below if someone younger in your family has surprised you with love after betrayal. Like this video if you believe the cycle can be broken. And subscribe because what happens next proves that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means rising. Chapter 14. She showed me the bruises on her back. I had just poured Layla a bowl of warm lentils when she flinched. She was trying to sit down, but she winced, just slightly, almost like she didn't want me to notice. But I did notice. Because I knew that flinch. I had lived it. For years. Layla, I said gently, show me. She froze. Her eyes dropped to the floor. And then, without a word, she turned her back to me and lifted her shirt. And there they were. Red marks. Fresh. Raw. Angry. The kind that don't come from falling. The kind only a belt or a twisted hand can leave behind. I covered my mouth, not just because of what I saw, but because of what I remembered. I had promised myself that my pain would end with me, that I would be the last one in our bloodline to suffer in silence. And yet, here was my granddaughter, carrying the same invisible wounds I had once hidden under saris and silence. They get mad when I ask questions, she whispered. About school. About clothes. About why you disappeared. Mama says girls are better off dumb and quiet. I sat beside her and held her hand. No, I said, my voice trembling. You are not dumb. And you will never be quiet again. Because now I had something more important than revenge. I had a purpose. This wasn't just about my survival anymore. It was about saving her. To every woman watching, especially grandmothers, aunts, mothers who've seen abuse trickle into the next generation, know this. Your fight isn't just for you. It's for the ones coming after you. And it's never too late to be the protector you once needed. Comment below if you've ever seen the cycle of pain repeat and vowed to end it. Like this video if this chapter broke your heart like it did mine. And please subscribe, because in the next chapter, I take her back to that house. But not to stay. Chapter 15. I return to the house, but not as their victim. It was exactly 182 days since I left that house with nothing but a bloodied scarf and broken bones. And now I was going back. But not as their maid. Not as their prisoner. Not even as their mother. This time, I was walking in as the owner of the land, the legal holder of the power, and the only one who could save them from complete ruin. Layla stood beside me, holding my hand tightly. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. We both knew why we were there. I knocked. Riaz opened the door. He froze. His face drained of color. And behind him, I saw Nadia, sunken cheeks, dark circles, and a look of sheer panic. Their house was falling apart, both literally and financially. The unpaid bills had piled up. The electricity was on the verge of being cut. Their fancy curtains were gone. The living room was almost empty. Amy, Riaz choked out. Please come in. I didn't step forward. I stood on the threshold and said, I came for her. I motioned to Layla. Not for you. They looked at her like she'd betrayed them. She didn't flinch. She stepped forward. Bold. Proud. And then I said the words I had waited months to say. I am the legal owner of the land. The bank won't help you. The courts have your names flagged for property fraud. And unless I lift a finger to save you, you will lose everything. Their mouths opened, but no sound came out. But I won't destroy you, I added. Because I want you to live long enough to feel what I felt every night on your cold kitchen floor. I turned to walk away. But before I left, Layla stepped back into the house, looked her parents in the eye, and said, From now on, I'm with her. She may be old, but she's stronger than both of you ever were. To every woman who dreams of walking back into the place that tried to break her, stronger, smarter, unbent, this is your reminder. Your story is not over. Sometimes, we return to the place of our pain, not to suffer again, but to reclaim what they thought they stole. Comment below if you've ever dreamed of reclaiming your power. Like this video if this chapter lit something inside you. And please subscribe, because next, I'll tell you what I did with the land, and how I turned it into something no one expected. Chapter 16. I turned the land they tried to steal into a sanctuary. They wanted my land to build a mansion, a monument to greed, but I had a different vision. 3 months after reclaiming it legally, I stood under the hot sun of Faisalabad, overlooking the dry, wild plot my father left me. Cracked soil, barren, forgotten. But I didn't see a wasteland. I saw freedom. With Mr. Hafiz's help, I contacted a local women's rights organization. And with every rupee I had and every ounce of my dignity, I signed the land over to a cause bigger than revenge. That land is now under construction. Not for profit. Not for luxury. But for safety. A small women's shelter. 2 rooms to start. Then 5. With clean beds. Running water. Legal aid. Counseling. A place where abused women, especially elderly ones, can escape when the world forgets them. I named it Napat. It means new leaves. Because even a tree that's been stripped bare can bloom again. Riaz heard about it. He came one last time alone. He stood outside the gate and said, You're really going to help strangers and leave your own son on the street? I looked him in the eye. You are not a stranger. You are a lesson. Then I turned away. And I didn't look back. To every woman watching, we may not all own land. We may not all have lawyers. But we do have a voice. And when you use your pain to build shelter for someone else, that's not just healing. That's legacy. Comment below if you've ever dreamed of turning your suffering into someone else's safety. Like this video if you believe in second chances, not for them, but for you. And subscribe, because the final chapters of this story will show you just how much power a woman over 60 can still hold. Chapter 17. They asked to stay in the shelter I built. Some stories write themselves. Others twist in ways you never expect. It was monsoon season. The rain pounded the new tin roof of Napat like a warning from the sky. I stood inside the common hall with Layla, arranging bedding for 2 elderly women who had just arrived, both thrown out by their sons. And then I saw them. At the gate, soaked, shivering, defeated. Riaz and Nadia. Their clothes were torn. Their eyes swollen from crying or hunger. I couldn't tell which. No umbrella. No dignity. Just desperation. They had nowhere else to go. Nadia couldn't meet my gaze. Riaz stepped forward, trembling. Emmy, he said, his voice almost a whisper. We heard you run a shelter now. Please, just for one night. We have no roof, no food. I don't even know where the kids are. I stared at him, the same man who once stood over me while I begged for bread. The same woman who helped throw me into that storage room like garbage. I didn't speak. I just moved aside and let one of our workers step forward. I'm sorry, she said firmly. This shelter is only for women. Riaz looked at me, stunned. You'd let strangers in, but not your own son? And for the first time in my life, I smiled. You called me a burden, a waste, remember? You said I wasn't worth the milk in my tea. Now I say to you, go find someone else to carry your burden. They didn't argue. They just turned away and disappeared into the dark, wet night. And no, I didn't feel guilt, because sometimes letting them suffer isn't revenge. It's justice. To every woman who's been asked to show mercy to the very people who destroyed her, remember this. Mercy isn't owed. It's earned. Comment below if you've ever had to close the door on someone who shattered you. Like this video if you believe that healing doesn't always mean taking them back. And subscribe, because the final 3 chapters? They aren't about revenge anymore. They're about rebirth. Chapter 18. I finally celebrated my birthday at 65. For most of my life, birthdays were just another day to survive. No cake, no candles, no warm hugs. Just the echo of pots clanging and harsh voices reminding me that I was aging, fading, burdening. But not this year. Not after everything. Not after I rebuilt myself from bones and bruises into a woman no one could ignore again. It was Layla's idea. She gathered the women from Napat, hung little paper banners from the rafters, and bought a small chocolate cake with 1 pink candle. When I walked into the hall that evening, I froze. Happy birthday, Dottie, she cried, tears in her eyes. All around me stood women like me, some older, some younger, but all of us reborn. Women who had once been beaten, broken, discarded, now clapping, smiling, singing. For me, I looked down at the cake. 1 candle, 1 symbol, not for the years lost, but for the fire that still burned inside me. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and made my first real wish, that no woman would ever have to survive what I did, alone. When I opened my eyes, I saw something even more beautiful than the decorations: freedom, in the faces of every survivor around me, including mine. To every woman watching, especially you, the one thinking it's too late to celebrate anything, listen to me. It is never too late to start over, to smile without fear, to light a candle not for someone else, but for you. Comment if you've ever had a birthday you wished someone remembered, or if you've celebrated one, finally, on your own terms. Like this video if you believe every woman deserves at least 1 day of pure joy. And subscribe, because the final 2 chapters? They're not just the end of the story. They're the beginning of a legacy. Chapter 19. I was invited to speak, and I spoke for all of us. It started with a letter. A small envelope delivered by hand to Napat. Inside was an invitation from a women's empowerment conference in Lahore. They had heard about the shelter. They had heard about me. At first, I hesitated. What would I say? Who would listen to an old woman with scars older than the microphones on their stage? But then Layla took my hand and said, Dottie, there are thousands of women who need to know they're not crazy, that they're not done. You're not just a survivor, you're proof. So I went. I stood in front of a room full of women, young, old, educated, broken, healing. Some wore heels, others wore scars. And when I stepped to the microphone, My heart beat like it did the day Riaz first raised his hand to me. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I told them everything, from the boiling tea burns to the blood on the bathroom floor, from the fake signatures to the shelter I built with nothing but pain and purpose. I told them about silence, about shame, about the cold nights in that storage room when I thought my story would end in that darkness. And then I told them about fire, the fire inside every woman that refuses to go out, no matter how many times they try to stamp it out. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one woman stood, then another, and then they clapped. Not politely, not because they had to. They clapped like they were clapping for themselves. I realized something in that moment. My story was never just mine. It belonged to every woman who was told she was too old to matter, too weak to fight, too broken to be seen. To you, watching this right now, yes, you, comment if you've ever been told to stay silent. Like this video if you've ever felt invisible but chose to stand anyway. And subscribe, because in the final chapter, I'll show you what true peace looks like when you write your own ending. Chapter 20. I sat by the sea and forgave myself. It was quiet. No screaming. No footsteps charging down the hall. No begging at my door. Just the sound of waves. Layla had taken me on a trip to the coast. A small guest house by the sea, nothing fancy. Just peace. The kind of peace you can only afford when you've survived hell and finally made it out. I sat by the shore in a worn shawl, holding a cup of chai, staring at the water. And for the first time in years, I cried. Not from pain, not from fear, but from release. I didn't cry for Riaz, or Nadia, or even the little girl inside me who once dreamed of a kind husband and a quiet life. I cried for the woman I used to be, the one who stayed too long, bent too far, swallowed too much. The one who thought love meant tolerance, who confused endurance with loyalty. And then, through tears, I whispered to the wind, I forgive you. I wasn't talking to Riaz. I wasn't talking to the people who beat me, locked me up, starved me, or laughed at my bleeding body. I was talking to myself. Because when you've walked through fire and built something from the ashes, the final step isn't revenge. It's not even justice. It's forgiveness. Not for them, but for the part of you that didn't know better, that didn't have help, that just wanted love, even if it hurt. So here I am, Zareena Malik, age 65, once beaten, now unbroken, once silenced, now a storyteller, once forgotten, now remembered. If this story moved you, please like it, share it with someone who needs to hear they're not alone, and subscribe, because there are millions of women like me, waiting to find their voice. Waiting to know it's not too late. That 60 isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of the part we write for ourselves. Comment below if this story felt like yours. And tell me, where are you watching from? Let's build a village of voices, one truth at a time.